You've looked up a competitor before. You've checked their reviews, maybe poked around on their website, and got a general feel for where they stand. And then you moved on because turning that into something useful felt like a whole separate project. In this video, I'm going to show you how to take all of that public information, paste it into Claude, and get back a structured competitive analysis in about 30 seconds. Not a summary, an actual analysis, positioning, strengths, gaps, and specific places where you could stand out. Let's get into it. You probably know your competitors better than you think you do. You've seen their ads, read some of their reviews, maybe even eaten at their restaurant. You've formed impressions. The problem isn't that you don't have information. The problem is that casual browsing and structured analysis produce very different results. When you look at a competitor on your own, you come away with a feeling. Maybe a little confidence, maybe a little anxiety, maybe both. What you rarely come away with is a clear picture of where the actual openings are. That gap between I've looked at them and I know how to position against them is exactly where this gets useful. Think about the last time you looked up a competitor. You noticed a few things. Their reviews were pretty good, or they had some complaints. Their website was polished, or it looked like it hadn't been touched in 3 years. You had some thoughts. And then what happened? Most of the time, those observations just sat there. They never got organized into anything you could act on. Not because you weren't paying attention, but because the raw impressions were scattered across a dozen different sources and you never had a system for pulling them together. And that's the gap we're filling today. A competitor's public presence tells a very specific story if you know how to read it. Their website and tagline will tell you what they think their biggest strength is. That's their self image. What they lead with, front and center. Their reviews tell you something different. Customers surface friction points that the competitor's own marketing either glosses over or never mentions at all. The gap between what a business says about itself and what customers actually experience is usually sitting right there in the review section. And then there's what a competitor never addresses, the things they stay silent on, the topics they avoid, the questions they don't answer, the services they don't mention. Silence is data too. Most people read all of this one piece at a time and never see what it adds up to. And that's exactly where AI earns its keep. Here's the move. You gather publicly available information about a competitor: website copy, reviews, social media posts, their Google listing, any other observations you've made, and you paste it into Claude with a specific prompt. Claude reads all of it together as a complete picture and returns a structured analysis of what the pieces actually add up to. Not a summary, an analysis organized around four specific questions that matter strategically. The input is information you could pull together in about 15 minutes. The output is something that would have taken considerably longer to produce on your own. Before we run the demo, let me walk through how this prompt is built, because that's where most people go wrong. When you ask AI a vague question, you get a vague answer. So we're going to do the opposite. We tell Claude to draw only from what we provide. No general knowledge about the restaurant industry, no assumptions, no filling the gaps with things it thinks it knows. Just the data we give it. We also tell Claude to return exactly four sections: how they position themselves, what they do well, where the gaps are, and where you could stand out. No filler, no encouragement, just organized observations across those four areas. The tighter the prompt, the more useful the output. Structure in, structure out. All right, here's what we're going to be working with. The competitor is Riverside Grill, a fictional local restaurant. I pulled together their website copy, Google listing, review themes, social media presence, and a few direct observations. All of it public information. Nothing that required any special access. Let's go ahead and get into Claude here. Here's the system prompt. that I'm going to be using. You are a competitive intelligence analyst. Your job is to analyze publicly available information about a competitor and return a structured analysis. You do not give advice. You do not recommend what the business owner should do. You only analyze what the data reveals. Return exactly 4 labeled sections. 1. How they position themselves. What story this competitor tells about who they are and who they serve. What language they use. What they lead with. 2. What they do well. Based on the information provided, what appears to be working. What customers respond to. Where they seem strong. 3. Where the gaps are. What is missing, inconsistent, or unaddressed. What customers seem to want that does not appear to be there. What the information does not say. 4. Where you could stand out. Specific angles a competitor could own that this business does not appear to be covering. Be concrete. Name the openings. Draw from only the information provided. Do not invent details. Do not soften findings to be encouraging. Return the 4 sections and nothing else. We'll go ahead and give Claude these directions here. All right, Claude's ready. And here is the user input we're going to be using for this one. Business name, Riverside Grill. Website, family-owned American restaurant. Fresh ingredients, familiar flavors. Lists burgers, sandwiches, fish fries, seasonal specials. No online ordering, no prices listed. Google listing, 4.2 stars, 187 reviews, listed as American restaurant, bar, and grill. Review themes. Food is consistently praised, especially the fish fry and burgers. Service is hit or miss depending on who you get. 3 reviews mention long waits with no updates. 2 mention they called and no one answered. Several say hidden gem, suggesting low visibility. Social media. Facebook, last post 6 weeks ago. Mostly food photos, low engagement, no responses to comments. Other observations? No website menu with prices, no online ordering, no response to any Google reviews, and no Instagram presence. Let's see what Claude can do with this. How they position themselves. Riverside Grill leads with identity over experience. It's family owned with American comfort food. Its generic burger and bar grill language could be used to describe hundreds of restaurants. No defined customer. They present as a place you stumble into, not one you seek out. What they do well, the food quality being consistent, unambiguous strength. 4.2 stars holds up. Fish fry and burgers are genuine standout dishes. Hidden gem label appearing in multiple independent reviews. Customers that find them become advocate. Where the gaps are. Operations are visibly leaking customers with no online ordering, no prices on the website, phones not being answered, long waits, 0 responses to Google reviews, signals disengagement. Social media is inactive. The hidden gem characterization, not too much of a compliment because it reveals a discoverability problem. There's no evidence of any loyalty mechanism, email list, or retention. Now, here's where we could stand out. Own the fish fry explicitly. Riverside has a strong product, but it doesn't market it as a destination. Operational transparency as a differentiator. Online ordering, visible pricing, and reliable phone accent are all absent. Competitor can make it easy to order. Review responsiveness as trust signal. No reviews are being acknowledged. Competitor that responds consistently to praise and complaints will appear more professional. Instagram presence targeting the exact food that already has word of mouth. Burgers and fish fry photograph well. Riverside isn't using this, so use those visuals to target the same dishes. You can intercept an audience from Riverside. Service consistency is a name promise. Multiple reviews flagged unpredictable service. Competitor that makes consistency part of its explicit brand promise and delivers directly addresses a documented frustration with this business. Hold on to that last section here for just a second, because we're going to come back to it. So, what did Claude actually return? The positioning section identified exactly what Riverside Grill leads with: familiarity, comfort food, local ownership. Their tagline, fresh ingredients, familiar flavors, signals consistency over novelty. They're positioning for regulars, not destination diners. Claude pulled that directly from their own copy without any interpretation from us. The strength section highlighted the food quality, the fish fry as a signature item driving repeat visits, and the 187 reviews as evidence of real community engagement. Every observation traced back to something in the data we provided. Nothing invented, nothing assumed. That's two clean sections that tell you exactly who this competitor thinks they are and what's actually working for them. But now here's where it gets useful. The gaps section names specific friction points sitting in plain sight. No response to any Google reviews, no pricing on the website, no online ordering, service inconsistency showing up across multiple reviews, which means the experience depends heavily on who you get that day. And then section 4, where you could stand out. Claude got concrete. No Instagram presence means that channel is wide open. Zero review responses means consistent engagement is an immediate differentiator. New customers hitting the website and finding no prices or online ordering creates friction that a competitor could remove entirely. The openings were always sitting in that data. They just needed someone to organize them, and that's exactly what this prompt did. Here's what makes this different from reading through a competitor's reviews on your own. Claude isn't making judgments about whether Riverside Grill is a good restaurant. It's reading what their own public presence reveals and organizing it into a format you can actually use. The gaps it identified didn't come from assumptions about the industry. They came directly from what was present and absent in the data you provided. That's the power of a structured prompt. You're not asking Claude what it thinks. You're asking it to read what's there and tell you what it adds up to. One honest note before you take this and run. Not every gap Claude identifies is worth chasing. Some reflect deliberate choices by your competitor. Maybe they skip online ordering on purpose because they want walk in traffic only. Maybe the social silence is intentional. Some gaps reflect their constraints, not yours. A staffing issue, a budget limitation, a decision that made sense for their situation and won't translate the same way to yours. Claude finds what's available in the data. You bring the business judgment to decide what openings actually fit where you want to go. The analysis is a strong starting point. What you do with it still belongs with you. Claude is genuinely good at pattern recognition across a set of public information. It doesn't get tired, it doesn't have a prior relationship with your competitor, and it doesn't see what it wants to see. That's useful. But Claude doesn't know your neighborhood. It doesn't know your history with this competitor, who their regulars are, or what your own honest gaps look like. It doesn't know that they've been in the community for 20 years, or that their rough reviews came from one bad month during a staffing crisis. You bring that context. The analysis gives you a structured starting point. Your market knowledge is what turns that into a real decision. So here's the takeaway. Every competitor you have is telling a story through their own website, their reviews, their social presence, and what they stay silent on. That story has been there the whole time. You can browse it casually and walk away with a vague impression, or you can run it through a structured analysis and walk away with a plan. One of those leads somewhere useful. Paste what you know into Claude using the prompt from this video. See what comes back. The prompt's in the description below, and you can try it on your own competitor right now. If you want to go further than a single analysis, whether that's building a system around this or applying it to your whole competitive landscape, that's what Eau Claire AI is here for. Check us out at eauclaireai.com. Subscribe if you want to keep seeing what AI can actually do for your business. We've got new videos every week, shown in easy to follow demos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.